All right, welcome back in. This is the Front Row Podcast with Coach Mark Gottfried, and I have had such a great time. I've had some fabulous guests that have done some amazing things in sports and television and movies, and but today I'm really, really excited because I've got one of the all-time great coaches. Had such an amazing run through the NBA. A lot of people forget how good of a basketball player George Karl was, but 27 years as a head coach in the NBA, George, only one of 9 guys to ever have over 1,000 wins. And I tell you what jumped off the page at me, George, was 22 playoff appearances in 27 years. And you certainly are one of the all-time great coaches. So thank you, George, for being on my show. This will be a lot of fun.
Well, I love the game. I think you know that. I have a lot of passion for the game of basketball, and I'm glad I'm out of it, but I'm also a big fan of it.
Yeah.
And I think we have some great young players in the NBA. And most of my career, I always was kind of always interested in where the game is going.
Mm-hmm.
And I am really right now. I think that's what I'm worried about the game a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be so money oriented, and kids being paid millions of dollars doesn't. I always thought our players should be paid, but I don't know if they should be paid what they're getting paid today.
Right. I would agree, George. Well, let's start with this. I'm so curious about this one. So when you were in high school, go way back to high school, just outside of Pittsburgh, and you decided to go play for the Tar Heels of North Carolina. Tell me about that and that decision, how you ended up at North Carolina.
Coach Smith, Coach Dean Smith, I was ready to sign with Lefty Driesell at Maryland. It was Lefty's first year at Maryland. He and George Rowling recruited me really hard. And it was a little closer to Pittsburgh. And Coach Smith saw me play in the Dapper Dan Roundball Classic.
Wow.
I was not recruited by him up until April 1st.
Wow.
And I played well. And the next day, Bill Guthridge was at my school. And he said, we'd like you to come for a visit. And I kind of explained to him, I said, I think my decision is already made. I think I'm going to go to Maryland. And the other school was Duke. It was Maryland, Duke, and Carolina. And for some reason, my mentor at that time, which was my junior high coach, said, what the hell? Why don't you just go down to North Carolina and see if you like it? And I did. And Denny Weisick and Steve Previs, 2 other Pittsburgh guys, were already there. And we kind of formed a pact that we wanted to have a Pittsburgh triumphant, a threesome in Pittsburgh at North Carolina. And I decided to go there. I remember the day I called Coach Smith on the day 1969 when the Boston Celtics beat the LA Lakers in Game 7 of a playoff series. I was watching the game with my mentor, and he said, let's do it.
Wow. How about that?
By the way, that game was on tape delay.
I remember those days. So
yeah.
Tell me about I didn't know Coach Smith well. I met him a few times. I met him once on a Nike trip, and I was the head coach at Alabama. And I just remember he knew my name without me introducing myself, and I was so excited. But playing for him, talk about playing for Dean Smith in that era and how that impacted you.
Well, I think the best phrase I owe so much to my career and my life by making that decision to be then mentored, coached, and then become a friend to a man that, loved the student athlete. He believed in the student athlete more than I think most college coaches did. And my freshman year, I had back surgery. It looked like my career could be over. And I got to know Coach Guthridge and Coach Smith a little bit more on a personal basis because of that. I didn't play basketball for about 6 months, and I was worried. But they really mentored me and held my hand, and fortunately my back held up. And then, we got guys like Bob McAdoo and Bobby Jones and Mitch Kupchak. We had a good NIT run my sophomore year, winning the tournament. And then we went to the Final Four, thinking we were going to play Bill Walton in the finals, and in UCLA. And we forgot about Florida State. Mm-hmm. And Florida State upset us in the semifinals.
Mm-hmm. How about that? Interesting. And I tell people,
Coach Smith is a better mentor of people than he is as a coach.
Wow.
I mean, he really cares about the program, his love for the players, the graduation of the players. This is proud of the guys that are lawyers or doctors or businessmen, as he is as his coaches and players are. He cares. And I've been blessed to be a part of, I think, the best basketball fraternity in the world. I mean, the Tar Heels love the Tar Heels, and we will do anything to make the Tar Heels better.
It's wonderful. You know, George, when you played, and a lot of people, because you had such a great run as a coach, they don't remember, as a player as much and being drafted in the NBA. But, after a couple years, you decided you wanted to coach. Did you always know that you wanted to coach, or was there a point where you said, this is what I really, really want to do?
Well, there were two things that happened in North Carolina, kind of three things, really. I was a scoring guard in high school. I scored a lot of points in my high school. And when I went to Carolina, they wanted me to play point guard. I didn't know much at that time. I didn't know that would mean that much. But at Carolina, the point guard is the quarterback of the team in a lot of ways. Our shot selection's got to be impeccable. So all the bad shots I was taking in high school, I couldn't take in college. But that freshman year where I had back surgery, to keep me busy, I went and spent a lot of time with Coach Guthridge on breaking down video and breaking down and grading a game tape and seeing what a practice plan was. And then when I graduated from high school, I graduated from Carolina, I went to Russia with Larry Brown and Doug Moe as an assistant coach of a AAU team, a USA team. And I spent, I think it was like 21 days in Russia with Larry Brown. And Larry Brown is a great coach also. And I think once of those experiences, along with being the point guard of a Carolina team for 3 years, I think I kind of always knew I wanted to try coaching. And then when my pro career was ended, Doug Moe was the head coach of San Antonio when as Doug would call me, I became a big stiff. I couldn't play anymore. And he was kind enough to keep me on as a scout and as a second assistant coach. So there's a lot of Carolina in there.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? You had such an amazing run, and I just had Tyler Hansborough on the show a couple weeks ago, and Tyler talked about the same thing, being a part of that Carolina family. The only thing that Tyler mentioned that was interesting is because the NIL, and we're paying players, money, and he feels like some of that, you're losing some of that, where guys like yourself all through the years, you had such love for Carolina, for being a part of that. And, I coached at NC State, so I'm pretty familiar. I was right there next door to you, but we're probably going to lose a little bit of that, where the kids aren't coming to the school for the school, kind of like you guys all did through the years. Now they're coming for the money. And I just don't know that that's healthy, because I think we're going to lose some of that passion, like your passion you have for Carolina and all the other guys that played there. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think we all know that college basketball is not the greatness of college basketball was the emotion and the intensity and the enthusiasm and the loyalty that players show every night that they play. And Carolina's been at the top of the mountain or near the top of the mountain for over 30 or 40 years. And Coach Smith always took care of the Carolina guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were always welcome to go back. Mm-hmm. Everybody, Roy Williams was just as good. Hubert is very kind to us. And I don't think Carolina's going to lose it. Mm-hmm. I think there's always going to be a magic, mystic, a connection to the past. Mm-hmm. I remember the 3 words that Coach Smith always yelled at me was, do it the right way. Mm. Like I threw a behind the back pass. and he kind of got mad at me for throwing a behind the back pass. And so we had a discussion about it after practice. Well, I was told after practice, I don't know if we had a discussion. That only I don't mind behind the back passes. That's the only way you can make it. Mm. But you threw it when you didn't have to throw it that way. Mm. And Coach was always kind of into staying fundamental, and not embarrassing the game. Today's game is a lot more flamboyant. Mm-hmm. We throw the ball off the backboard. But back then, we didn't want to embarrass anybody. It was kind of fancying the game up.
Yep. Were there times, George, because every time, especially after Coach Smith and, Coach Guthridge and then Matt Doherty and then eventually Roy, but was there a time during that period where you would have liked to be the coach at North Carolina? Because I always thought you were a natural. For me, I always thought, well, George Karl's sitting out there, and he's a Carolina guy. To me, it was like that was easy. But for you, because you had been so long in the NBA, but what was was that ever part of your thought process?
Yeah, I was highly disappointed when Coach Guthridge retired. Coach Guthridge retired thinking that Roy was going to take the job then. Right. Mm-hmm. And Roy, decided to stay at Kansas. Mm-hmm. And Carolina was searching. Mm-hmm. Larry Brown was the pro coach. I was the pro coach in Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. I was being paid a lot of money. But I did not have an escape clause in my contract. Mm. And Coach Smith and I talked about it. And actually, Coach Smith called Herb Cole, my owner, to try to talk him out of letting me come, because I would have gone. Mm. And I think that really hurt Coach Smith. It really hurt me that I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
I would have loved to work with Coach Guthridge and Coach Smith on learning the game again. I really think the college game is quite different than the pro game. Mm-hmm. But I think the pro game is, as I think a lot of people are seeing, can help the college game.
Yep. George, that's an interesting, and I appreciate you being honest with all that. You had such a great run in the NBA, though. Like and coaching, a lot of times jobs are open because the guy before maybe is struggling a little bit. And a lot of times that's why we get an opportunity. And I was that way three or four times in my career. But it seemed like everywhere you went, you turned it around. You turned a program, you turned a franchise that was struggling into, winning, like in Seattle. Those years in Seattle were so amazing to watch. And so your teams were fun. Milwaukee, Denver, even Cleveland early on. But what do you think, George, if you go back, and why did you, what were the ingredients for you that you felt like you had to do to turn something around? Because it's not always easy to do.
Well, it's hard because every situation is different. But someone brought to my attention, I didn't realize that I never got a team that had a winning record.
That's right.
Every team I joined had a losing record before I got there. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, most of those teams had good players.
Yeah.
And they just hadn't found themselves yet. I have great enthusiasm to practice. I have a lot of, my big thing is basketball is about getting better and playing together. It's about understanding it's a we game and not a me game. Mm-hmm. And learning to sacrifice and having fun doing it. Mm-hmm. Basketball, when you connect, there's an energy to it that only the players can feel. Mm. And fortunately in college, I learned that energy was really important. But then in pro ball, to try to find that energy is what the magic is. Mm. Everybody thinks it's X and O's. Mm. A lot of the game of basketball is mental and commitment. And pro ball is a very talented. Every team has a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. And I think learning how to make talent work together and respect the weakness of the game are kind of my daily desires. I really want it to be a team game. And I never really coached maybe those superstar top 5 player. I always had to have guys that were all-stars, but maybe not Hall of Famers. Mm-hmm. Gary Payton's a Hall of Famer. Ray Allen's a Hall of Famer. Chris Mullin's a Hall of Famer. I've had a few, but most of my players were just really good players. Mm-hmm. And I had to find a way to make them better and make them work together.
Mm-hmm. You had to play against one of those one year in the finals when, if I get this right, your Seattle Supersonics team, I think it was, mid-'90s, got in there, but you're looking across the way down there at number 23, at number 23 for the Bulls, who was a pretty good player. And probably without him or without it being that team, that's a year I think you probably win it. Your team was good enough. You guys were good enough to win it.
Yeah, I think the 2 years that was the year I think we won 64 games and Chicago won 71 games or 72 games or something like that. Mm-hmm. We both had great years. When COVID hit a couple of years ago, I went back and watched the series. We were really both teams were really good defensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was ugly basketball. I mean, it was not pretty on the court watching that series, except it was exciting, very physical. Michael Jordan shot under 40% for the series. I thought we did a pretty good job on him. The guy we couldn't control was Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman kept giving him 10 extra possessions a game with offensive rebounding. I know he had at least 2 20-rebound games. And he was a pain in the ass on defense. Yep. And, and we didn't have, Nate McMillan was not healthy in that game, that series. Mm-hmm. And I know it's embellishing history a little bit, But I would have loved to play again with a healthy Nate McMillan.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nate was the soul of our team. And he was the guy that made us connect.
Yeah.
He was the quiet leader of our team. And when he played in that series, I think 2 or 3 games. And we won every game he played. He played in. But he had a bad knee, and he finally had to close it down.
Yeah. George, do you think when you talk about players, would Dennis Rodman be one of the most unique players you ever witnessed? Because I say that all the time. I got drafted by Detroit. He was young, and so I was in and out for about a year. But that was when Dennis was young. But I tell people all the time, I had never seen anybody like that. That was 6'8", could run like a deer and jump and played hard and he was just unique. Would you agree?
Well, I think they had 2 great players that were very unique to pro basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Rodman totally was a rebounder, defender.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want to score. But then they had Scottie Pippen.
Mm-hmm.
Scottie Pippen was a 6'9", maybe even a little bigger than that. And he could play anywhere on the court.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the beginning of a no-position guy.
That's right.
And when Phil came in, I thought he really did a great job of maneuvering their defense around Scottie and Rodman. And they actually got Ronnie Harper at the end of his career playing defense.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm not a lover of the triangle at the offensive end of the court.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, Phil Jackson never got the credit he deserved for his little things he would do defensively that I thought really made his teams real difficult to play against.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this one, George. I'm curious because I think. Well, let me just say this. I don't think you ever totally got all the credit that you deserve for being as good as you were at so many different places. And so in my view, you're one of the best to ever coach, period. You could just take that one to the bank. And but as a guy like yourself that's in that group throughout your years, were there a couple coaches that boy, when we play that team now, we better execute because they're executing and they're defensively so sound. I mean, I know there was probably been a lot of them, but are there a couple guys that might jump out or stand out to you? Like, boy, the respect I had for that guy on that other down on another bench right there. I've got great respect for him. Were there a couple guys maybe for you?
Well, my favorite guy I coached against was Jerry Sloan. Jerry Sloan had Karl Malone and Stockton, and I had Sean and Gary. And someone told me this, and I'm pretty sure it's probably true, that over our career at Utah and Seattle, Sloan and I played each other like 85 games. And the difference of us winning was 1 game. I don't know who was on top, but we went through a lot of, at the beginning, Sloan, I remember playing Stockton when Stockton came off the bench. And then I remember when he was 35 years old and he was still an all-star. And Sloan was, he was a very defensive-minded player, but his genius in coaching might have been his offense.
Wow.
I thought he was better offensively in getting the shot he wanted as well as anybody I played against. I had Bob Kloppenberg, and Kloppy wanted to disrupt everything. He wanted to double team, and he wanted to disrupt. And at one time, we had success against Utah disrupting them, and then they kicked our ass. And we had to go back to the basic fundamentals. But I think Sloan would be one guy I thought was never got the love he probably deserved also along the way, because another guy, I always loved watching Greg Popovich grow up. Mm-hmm. I know that's hard to say, but Pop when he became a pro coach, he really evolved. He took Larry Brown's stuff. He took Clark's stuff. He took a lot of stuff, and then he fell into Tim Duncan
Yep.
and David Robinson.
Yep.
But I don't think Pop gets the attention or love
Yeah.
that how he learned and changed and got better. I think the guy still coaching today that does a great job is Rick Carlisle.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy at Indiana. I think Indiana's going to be a good team this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now, Rick has transmitted or transferred his philosophy into playing fast. And I think they do it about as well as anybody
Yep.
in the NBA. Other guys that Jack Ramsey was really early in my career. Bill Fitch, really an interesting coach to coach against. I mentioned Larry Brown. I think Larry was a very fundamentally tough-minded guy to go against. But as I said, my favorite guy was Jerry Sloan.
That's great. I had Thurl Bailey a couple weeks ago on my show, and he talked about just the respect those guys had for Jerry because he was just so tough. They knew him as a tough player, but they had great respect for him just because of just how, tough-minded, and they just felt that kind of just transferred right into their team, his personality. And it was really interesting to hear Thurl talk about Jerry in that way.
They were definitely tough. They were physical. My first year in Seattle, I think it was my first year in Seattle. My memory is losing it. I know we upset Golden State in the first round. And I think we played Utah in the second round. Mm-hmm. And they beat us 4-1. Or maybe back then it was 3-1. But they beat the hell out of us. And I went home and watched the video and reviewed the season. And the first thing I did was hire a weight coach. Because we got beat up. That's how physical they were. We got our skinny athletes and Sean and Gary. They got beat up by Mark Eaton and Thurl Bailey. And, they had a kid from Wichita State. They had a lot of big men that took fouls and knew how to take them and protected the paint really well. And I remember I was one of the first guys in the NBA to hire a weight coach. And I did it because Utah Jazz beat the hell out of us.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? Coach, let me ask you this one because, and I coached for 33 years. I've been fired, and being fired is no fun. And, even in pro sports, people around the country, when somebody gets fired or they're dismissed, people just – I don't know that people really understand how hard it hurts. It hurt me. I can tell you that. And you had some of those where you had some setbacks, but you kind of always bounced back. You always kind of came back, with something. And a few times you had I think you went to, I know you went in the CBA maybe after Cleveland, and I think you had gone overseas a couple times and coached, but you always kind of bounced back. But those tough times like that in coaching, we've all had them. I've had them. I've had great moments. Then you had some of them tough ones, And talk a little bit about kind of how you handled that. And it's part of the business, but boy, it still hurts. I know that.
Well, I think that people don't realize that not only does it hurt you, but your assistant coaches and their families, they got to get new jobs. I really felt at the end of my career, I was really more sad for my staff than I was for myself. Financially, I was okay, and but it's just I really wish there would be more organizations in pro sport, not only basketball, but baseball and football, that would give more continuity, being more valuable. I think we changed coaches for a lot of reasons. And a lot of reasons are excuses for the owner or someone not liking the coach.
Mm-hmm.
When you hire that coach, if you don't give him a commitment or a loyalty, it can become very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very fortunate in having good relationships, but I've also had bad relationships with ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And today's game is worse than ever. The owners and management have more say in coaching, not only in basketball, but in football and in baseball. And I'm not sure that's the way it can be. Um, every year before I would start my season, I always read the book called The Art of War.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old time book on war from about 5000 BC. And one of the first things it says in the book is there can only be one general. Well, today's world of sports, there's a lot of guys trying to be the general.
Right.
And there's only one head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the system to be more like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there would be more Miamis, more San Antonios,
Mm-hmm.
where they stay with the coach
Mm-hmm.
and don't always change the coach.
Mm-hmm.
The franchise I really like in the NBA today is Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sam Presti
Yep.
has done a hell of a job understanding to put that good of a team together in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
And they play the game the right way.
Mm-hmm.
They got a young coach. It's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And they're together.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of my first meetings when I coached at Golden State was I had the opportunity to spend a day with Bill Walsh, the football coach at San Francisco. And he said to me that in the NFL, there's only about 5 or 6 teams that organizationally are together enough to win an NFL championship. Mm. And I really think that deep down inside that coaching today is well paid, but I don't think it's a good job anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a tough job, a difficult job, and in a lot of ways, a thankless job.
Mm-hmm. You know, you brought up a great point, because when I look around the NBA and I look at Oklahoma City, Miami, San Antonio, Indiana, Denver, they seem to be, you would know a lot more about this than me, but they seem to be building their franchise in such a, it just seems to feel so solid. Then I look at some others, I hate saying this out loud, but even Los Angeles, like the Lakers and some, just to me, it just doesn't compare. You know, they like Denver, you know, they've built through the draft, they've added some free agents and some trades, but, you know, they've just kind of hung in there together, and they've got a great player, obviously, in Jokic, but even Jamal Murray and the pieces around it, but they seem to build it the right way. I don't know would you agree with some of those, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think anytime that, franchises have different philosophies on how to build a team. Mm-hmm. But the two teams in Miami and San Antonio have done it always from within. Mm-hmm. They're very loyal to their players. I think they have a belief in developing players. The teams like the Lakers and the Celtics do more, I think, free agency, mm-hmm. signing a guy and bringing him in and building around that guy. But continuity, I think, is really important, mm-hmm. a lot more than I think owners do. But the noise around the game right now
Mm-hmm.
is so loud. The money around the game right now only makes it more difficult.
Mm.
It doesn't make it easier. I remember when Carmelo Anthony wanted to be traded, and he said he wanted to develop his brand. I had to go ask some guys, what is brand? You know? Why can't you develop your brand in Denver? And I'm going, okay. But I mean, we've gone through, in my time in basketball, we didn't have cell phones when I started. We didn't have computers when I started. We didn't have the money that we have today. There's a lot of things that create a lot of noise around the game that coaches got to learn how to deal with. But more importantly, trying to stop it from becoming negative.
Right.
The negative energy out of the locker room was always important to me. I went to hiring. I mean, most of the last 10 people I hired, all were positive people. You know, I wanted guys that knew how to energize on a daily basis, that could forget a tough loss the next day and come to work and figure out how to get better. And I really became a positive-minded guy towards the end of my career. A lot of it because of my cancer scares. Mm-hmm. You know, I've had a couple cancers that kind of woke me up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think today it's still that type of game. It's changing every day. Mm-hmm. College basketball, it's changing. Mm-hmm. The money in the game today. I'd like to know give me your 2-minute assessment of what is the NIL going to do to the game of basketball.
George, it's a conversation I have all the time with all of my friends who are coaching in college, and they agree that some of the players that have a big name and they can make money off their name. We understand that a little bit, and the tournament makes so much money. I think last year it was $1.2 billion was the three-week tournament. But when they combined the portal where kids could just jump in and transfer along with getting paid, it just creates so much chaos at the same time. And it makes me a little sad, George, because I think a lot of guys I talk to, they understand that right now it's almost like everything's a one-year transactional team. Like I'm going to build my team for 1 year, and then next year I might have 7 or 8 or 9 new players. And I just don't know that I would have as much fun with that, because I enjoyed being with the players and I enjoyed trying to help develop a guy over 3 or 4 years or 5. I enjoyed that. That was kind of why I coached, is to try to help a guy get better. And so I think we're losing that. That makes me sad for college basketball. People still watch it, still great game, but that relationship you built with people, I don't know if it's going to be the same as it used to be. That's kind of my take.
Yeah. I mean, our world is changing. Mm-hmm. But I really hope we figure out the student athlete along the way.
Yeah.
Because, all right now we're focusing on is how basketball players make money.
Yeah.
And I went to college because my dad wanted me to go to college. Mm-hmm. And I know he couldn't pay me, mm-hmm. pay for me to go to North Carolina. Mm. And I'm proud that I have my degree. I'm proud that North Carolina graduates 90% of their athletes. Mm-hmm. And I hope they continue to do so.
Yeah, me too. I really do. Coach, let me ask you this one. In the NBA, we talked a little bit at the start about how the game is changing, but when you coached those years, especially like in the 90s and the early 2000s and, 80s, 90s, I remember it was almost like every coach had a different philosophy. Jerry Sloan ran a lot of stuff off the UCLA cut, and then he had all kind of little variations. And then, Phil Jackson was different, and Pat Riley. Everybody was different. Your style and what you guys did and ran offensively. And I watched the game today, and it appears like it's kind of all blended together. It's 4 out, 1 in, high pick and roll, dive, lift behind, all that stuff. And I think we've lost a little bit of the character of each coach, each program, because I liked watching how different every coach coached kind of in your era. Would you agree with that one, or am I seeing it differently?
No, I think you're saying it correctly, except the game is now gone. I can't be critical of the game because I like the freedom that the coaches now are giving the players.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the game I like playing fast, and the game is definitely being played fast. Mm-hmm. But there's always moments that you can have your own personality. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're missing. You're missing that guy like Greg Popovich. When you play Greg Popovich, he has 3 plays in the fourth quarter. 1 for Duncan, 1 for Ginobili, and 1 for Parker. And you know that play was going to come every fourth quarter. And it will always piss you off when you couldn't stop it. And I mean every night. You got to look at and then it got to be a thing about, as a coach, going, we're not going to let him get these plays. Mm-hmm. Like Dick Marta would bet me $100 that we're going to get a backdoor slip on the UCLA cut. And damn it, he won most of the time. My last couple of years in the league, my big thing was scoring in the paint. And we led the league in scoring in the paint a couple of years here in Denver. And we didn't have any all-stars. We just believed in attacking the paint and attacking the rim. And we had some really good big guys who could rebound the ball. But I think the little personalities of why coaches make a difference. Mm-hmm. That's why I like doing it. I like studying it. I mentioned Oklahoma City. I think Jokic and Mike Malone have done a good job of playing the game through a big man. Mm-hmm. When has that done? That hasn't happened in 10 years. Mm-mm. But when you have Jokic, the ball should be in his hand. Ooh. Yep. And I know LeBron doesn't want to be called the point guard, but he is a point guard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He has the ball all the time. Mm-hmm. Doncic has the ball all the time. Mm-hmm. We have more big guys handling the ball and making the playmaking decision. And so that's kind of where the game is going. Mm-hmm. And the NBA game has gone to 5 out. Yep. And I'm not a big fan of 5 out. Right. I believe in 4 out. Yep. And I'm trying to figure out why everybody's playing 5 out. I still like 4 out. So I talk a lot of time about that. Vance Wahlberg now is at Fresno State. Yep. I'm going up to see him next week because Vance worked for me. Mm-hmm. And he's a great basketball guy. Mm-hmm. And you actually mentioned him in one of the questions before that a couple guys that influenced me were Del Harris and Vance Wahlberg. Wow. Del Harris, they're both encyclopedias of the game of basketball. And I've been blessed to have them both in my career, in my life. Yeah. George, you have not only have you always been successful and you had this amazing career, but I'm going to tell you one thing I respect about you that I've always liked about you. I think that you're authentic. I think that you're real the times I've been around you, but you also have never been afraid to show the world how you feel. And you've been, not the word outspoken isn't the right word, but just you're not afraid to speak up for things you care about, things that are right in your mind. So to me, that's been something for me where
I would say I admire George Karl for that.
Mark, I appreciate that. I mean, I think the game has gotten to be more perception and spin than honest. I've been fired twice by guys that two owners told me I'm too honest to be a coach in the NBA. And I don't understand why we can't be honest anymore. If I lied once, my dad would kick my ass. You know, I mean, back when I was younger, you couldn't lie. That's not allowed. But I think today's game, there's a lot of guys out there that are in it for the money more than for the passion. And I like hanging around the guys that have the passion.
You couldn't have said it better, Coach. You could not have said it better. And I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for being on the show, but also thank you for everything you've given to the game. You've given so much to the game and to people, and you can tell, I've always known this about you, the players that have played for you, and I know a lot of them, they talk about that passion that you had. They talk about it, and that's an amazing attribute for you. So thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for the game, too, by the way, and for other people along the way.
Well, Mark, that's kind of you. I'm retired now, and I've been blessed with a great career. But the rest of my life, I want to give back to the game in a loving way. And as I said, I don't know where the game is going, but it's changing. The pro game is changing, and definitely the college game is going to change. And I thank you for having me on.
Okay, George. Thank you so much, and best wishes to you, man. Thank you.
Okay, Mark. Hope to see you out in Newport Beach.
There you go. Come on anytime.
That's not a bad place to hang.
George Karl. Thank you, George.